painting something, it's not going how I want it to go. So you really have got to stop painting it. Otherwise, you just make it worse.
It completely pulled me away from all the negativity that I was experiencing with the project and gave me something that I was really positive about.
When I'm painting something or getting frustrated with it, you start to doubt my own ability.
Once you've instilled the confidence in yourself, you can take that self-doubt out of your head because it's getting in your way.
It's just great fun. You just whack it on and you can literally sit there and watch it transforming before your very eyes. It's like magic.
Hello everyone and welcome to Paint Perspective episode 87. This week we're going to be talking about how to enjoy painting Warhammer even when you hate it. We're of course going to be doing our question of the week and our hobby hacks. But first, Paul, how is the Cavalier Marshal going?
Almost, everyone will be so pleased to hear that he's almost finished. I've just got the base rim. To be careful there. The base rim to paint. That's it, and that's it. Then I'm done, and I can just.
I'd call that finished.
I'd call that finished.
It's not finished until it's finished.
Yeah, I get that. That would take like seconds, like
it depends how careful you
10
want to be,
seconds, and you'll have it done. Hairdryer.
I suppose. Yeah, I do. 950
model color black, not another color. George.
Can I ask a question? So you finished?
Is it going to be brown or black?
No, that's not what I'm going to ask, but I will get to that. First of all, so you finished painting the model, presumably recently, and you went, all I've got left to do is the base rim. That will take 15 seconds, and then you put it down and went to bed? Like, why didn't you just finish it?
Why didn't you paint it?
Oh, because I have a life and other things happen. So
15 seconds, though, Paul.
A lot can happen in 15 seconds.
That's fair.
I have a daughter who there was Pokemon games to be played, so that took priority.
Fair.
So.
Okay.
No, I'll finish that tonight. What I did was I finished all the main model. I put the base together and sort of give it a quick coat of varnish. So then I thought I just need to leave it. I need to go and do other things. So
fair.
I left it and I thought I'll do the base another day. I waited for all the other glues and things to dry.
Follow-up question.
Yeah.
What
black.
colour? Never mind.
Great choice.
I did ask Adam what sort of colour he uses, because for AOS I know sometimes it's like a brown rim base.
That'd be.
They use like grey sometimes.
Yeah, they do use grey. It's I think that's Skaven Blight Dinge.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, I was tempted and I asked him what colours he used, and then I just thought, no, that's madness. I'll just use black.
Good.
What am I doing?
What do those heavy metal painters at Games Workshop know anything about painting?
Nothing. It's my base, so I thought I'll just use black.
It's my base, my way.
Yeah,
exactly.
And actually, I thought if I used there was a kind of a reasoning in my madness of a brain. I just thought if I do a brown written base, the horse is brown. There's other browns on there. I agree.
I agree.
I just need something else to separate.
Plus, you're not doing like an army of it, are you? So like it's like exactly. So
just one.
It's a single piece.
So I just thought I'd do it. Yeah. So almost finished. Yes.
For the record, it hasn't always got to be brown. It's just an appropriate colour, and normally brown is the correct colour. But there are some fringe circumstances, rarely on occasion.
Correct. Well, I don't think I've ever done a rim-based brown ever.
Yeah.
It's just always black. I don't know.
You'll grow up one day. Don't worry.
Oh, you'll mature into an adult one day.
Low, literally. That was uncalled for.
Turn into a butterfly one day. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
No, black. It's just black. I can't do any other base colour but black, I don't think.
This is nostalgic. We haven't talked about base rims in a while, have we?
No.
Yeah. I don't think. Well, I've never.
Well, I'll throw it into the mix then, because I've actually painted. George will be very pleased about this. I've painted a Steel Legion drab base rim on the model that I'm painting. So
right,
be
happy with that.
What model are you painting?
I've nearly finished Lhykis, so I have conquered my Everest, so to speak. It's I realised it was really stupid having it in so many millions of parts. It was only 4, but never mind. And I just decided to
stuck it all together.
Stuck most of it together, other than one of the arms that connects to the base and the back, so I can just slot Lhykis into the body of Lhykis into the model. And I think since putting it together in less than that, the amount of pieces that it was in, I just found it really easy to then start working. Do you know what it is? I think it's because it's like painting not in my normal process that's really thrown me off. I think I mentioned it. I had a lot of reflection on it over the last couple of days or so. Or since the last episode, I've really had a lot of thought about it, and then quite a few evenings of painting it and doing stuff around work. And I just thought that put it together, paint it in your normal way, and or as close as possible to your normal way, and that will bring it closer to home in the sense of how I feel about painting it, and it's worked really. Like I couldn't put it down on the weekend. Literally, I was a whole Saturday.
That's good.
I had a whole Saturday to paint, which is great. So yeah. I haven't had a full day in a long time, but it's Saturday. I just literally sat down really early. My friend Tom came over in the afternoon. We had a painting afternoon.
Bit of a sesh.
It's good. Yeah. Really, really good. So it's very close. Just backpack now. and then like the back of the backpack and a couple of the Dr. Octopus arm things, and then we're done. So
Nice.
You can move on with your life.
yes, yeah. I can
Do
get on,
something
I can
else.
Get onto the
But carry on painting Nurglings or something.
Yeah, but I was sitting at home thinking, like, I don't know why it is that it's always Eldar for me that seems to be like the more difficult thing. I don't know why it is, but
Is it just because they're so like so slender and tricky and
potentially,
intricate
yeah.
and-
I think
We spoke about it a little bit last week.
We
didn't
did,
we?
yeah.
They
Yeah.
can be a bit
No,
challenging. But
yeah, but I actually feel like I want to tackle more to get comfortable with it. So I think that'll make you better as a painter by doing more stuff.
It's a good job they've released a whole bunch of new
I
models.
mean, yeah, exactly.
So there you go.
So
Yeah,
so
nice.
I've been chipping away. Do you remember I was painting the Death Guard character from one of the old, Gurg the Foul.
your best mate.
Yeah, he's my pal. He's great.
Well,
Especially his little Nurglings.
George
No,
does
no-
not.
no Nurglings.
George's models
No
are
Nurglings.
sans Nurgling. Yeah,
I understand.
yeah.
Well, anyway, he was left in a sort of unfinished state before Christmas, kind of went on the back burner. And then I am painting a Blood Angel squad, which I'm still painting. But I was like, I fancy a little bit of a mini break. And Gurg's in some sub-assemblies. So I thought, I could just like paint an arm for a bit. Different colour, different techniques.
Yeah.
Give me a bit of a palette cleanser after doing the tedious edge highlights on the Blood Angels. So dipping back into Gurgville.
Yeah, that's good because you get to be a bit sloppy and a bit messy. And
In a way, I'm doing it in the...
are you able to disconnect from the?
Well, I think
I tell you
clean and
what, I've been
tidy?
doing the like heavy metal. I don't know how we should describe it, but
Heavy
like
metal
it's like
dirt.
a clean
Weathered.
style of dirty.
yeah. But it's like we were talking about that. Like I always bring it up, that Dreadnought from GD. You can still do a weathered style, but just neat and clean. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean this is
Neat,
nowhere
it's
near
it
that,
sounds like an
but
oxymoron, but it's like it's literally you can do it.
I felt
So-
I was doing some of the like oxidization and stuff on some of the copper trim,
Yeah.
and it was like trying to do that smoothly was really difficult actually.
Yeah.
But it was fun. I'm really enjoying painting it. I need to finish him up. He's like on the home stretch. The bulk of it's done. I've just got to do some of the boring bits. Like, when you get to like, you always inevitably just paint the front of the model first. And then you're like, I've got to do the back.
You got to do the back.
That's the exact thing that I did with Lhykis.
Yeah.
Painted all the front parts, and then the
Yeah.
back is like, oh,
No one looks at the
just
back,
leave-
do
just
they?
leave that, yeah.
By that point, you've already spent all of your motivation, haven't you?
Exactly,
right?
yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
it's like painting a whole other model that you don't want to paint. It's just but the back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
No.
But
I don't know. The good things with Death Guard is that they're so intricate and interesting anyway. No matter what angle you look at them at, so there's always something.
Well, the best part for me
there.
is once it's in my cabinet, no one's going to see the back.
Yeah,
it's
true.
very
That.
true. Yeah.
True, I suppose.
And if you don't do a carousel on Instagram, people only see the front.
That's
so
it.
there you go.
But we'll know.
Yeah.
Everyone listening
We'll
will know.
know.
No,
watching
I
will know.
always paint the back.
He always sprays it undercoat. Yeah.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly.
Allegedly.
We've never seen the back of any of his models.
Yeah.
I always post photos of the back of my model on my Instagram.
Allegedly.
Yeah, well, I will be expecting to see a fully painted Gurg.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
You
he's
can't-
gonna-
come
he's
on, you
gonna
can't
fully
let
paint.
Paul down and not paint.
No.
Give
Well, he's
Gurg
already
the
let
full
us down.
treatment.
He's clipped off the Nurgling, haven't you, off his shoulder?
The two Nurglings. Yeah.
I just don't understand why.
It's currently attached to one of my models for my dioramas.
At least they are being painted.
They are being rehomed, yeah.
Oh, I see. I
Yeah.
see what it is by a competent painter, someone who's not afraid
There's the return
to
fire
paint,
volley.
to
There we
paint
go.
Nurglings. Is
There
that what
we
you're
go.
too scared to paint
There we go.
Nurglings? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Right.
The problem is, here we go. Buckle in.
Yeah.
Right. What's the problem in Nurglings?
Let's say I did like Nurglings. They feel to me inappropriate on that miniature. He's very serious. He looks very hardcore.
Yeah.
Half his face is blown off. And there's just like this little guy
It's
having
to
a good old
balance the
time.
stern and the. You need
Yeah.
it's to balance it out, George. That's
Nah.
it. Yeah.
It's the
No,
humour.
not for me.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, well,
Are you
it's-
even a
well,
Death Guard
they found a good home. I'm going to be painting them, and
Good.
the exact things you're talking about are why I am super excited to get onto the Nurgle part of the diorama, because I just think it'll counterbalance everything else really nicely, and as a painter I'll be like, oh, I've done all this stuff that's clean and like blah blah. I can now go a bit crazy with this side of it.
Well, have fun with them because the recipe is hard.
Yes, I know. We've been speaking about that. Yeah,
I have actually come to think of it. I have been thinking about doing some of my kill team, and there is a part of me that wants to do or try to do a super clean Death Guard miniature rather than
what, loyalist.
no, rather than the really messy types.
Do you mean in the sense of like not clean as in literally, but just in terms of the refinement of the paintwork?
Well, normally I paint as clean as possible with like refinement of paintwork, and then I throw a load of junk all
You make
over
it sound like Paul's sitting there painting models with a roller, George. Like,
That's what I,
That's not what I mean.
normally
No,
I do. Yeah.
for example, with mine, I would say that it's like cleanly painted,
Yeah.
but he's still covered in like chips and grime. and
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Well, I would kind of attempt something similar with edge highlighting and things with Death Guard, but then I'd throw a load of dirty washes over it and rust all over it, and then all that work that I'd spent ages and would all be washed away by all the dirt. So, but I think I might try something a bit cleaner and not throw so much grime all over it. So maybe I'm just as bad as you in that sense.
I think a way to combat that is to kind of do the weathering and stuff throughout the process rather than at the end, because then you end up doing that in the same sort of refined mindset. Because there's a tendency to, like you said, you paint it, you're putting in a lot of focus and effort because trying to keep everything clean. But then when it comes to putting all of the effects on, you kind of just go a bit mad and a bit haphazard
crazy,
with it.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a almost not. I don't know whether it's a waste of time doing that. Being so careful with everything and then just chucking loads of muck all over it.
Yeah.
But actually, I'm quite keen to perhaps use some washes a bit more and doing some shading with washes and things rather than just using like glazes. That's what I'm getting at. I'd rather do glaze shading now. I'm getting quite keen on sort of doing that and watching it sort of things build up rather than just doing a wash and thinking that'll do.
It's so enjoyable to watch your progression as a painter, Paul. Like it's literally weekly that stuff happens in your painting.
Well, I know glazes can take a long time to sort of build up.
If you hairdryer it doesn't.
Well, I'm talking about sort of colour pigment, not necessarily the drying part of it.
It takes multiple coats. It's not a one.
But
one job.
it is a noticeable process.
Yeah.
I mean, it is quite a satisfying thing to do, actually.
Yeah.
I do like the end effect more than just sort of. I just tend to grab a wash and null oil everything, or Agrax all over it. Yeah, that's done.
I think there's a time and place for washes and stuff. But if in terms of glazed shading is always my favorite way to do things, just because you've got so much more control.
Yeah.
And you can add the opacity of shading that you want in certain areas at the time, exactly specifically where you want it, and you're creeping up on that shading. Whereas with a wash, it's like it goes from this binary state of like didn't have the wash on it, and does have the wash on it.
Yeah, but I'm quite liking as well, like not just using sort of a darker version of the colours, but random colours.
Yeah,
like random dark colours for shading different things, and that's quite.
You went through a bit of the horse had a purple on it, didn't it?
Yeah, he was fully purpled up. But
you like underpainted it, didn't you?
I did spray it, but I also made a choice to sort of instead of the way I painted him really was every colour is only one colour on the model, and the way I made the shade colours was to add purple to it. So no matter what colour it was on the model, it had purple added to it as well to make the shade colour.
Oh, is that like the mother colour? I think they call that.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
I've heard of that.
I did see it. Another artist did it, so I thought that looks like a nice idea. And then I used ice yellow for the highlight mix for every single colour. So every single colour's got the same purple added to it and ice yellow. So it's kind of although it doesn't work with all colours for highlights, like otherwise, the ice yellow just makes it too yellow.
Yeah.
So I couldn't do everything that way. But for the most part, it was quite a nice little experience. So that was quite cool. I enjoyed doing that. So
great little experiment then.
Yeah. Just doing, just pick three colours, or just pick a shade colour and a highlight colour, and just use those two to mix in with all of your colours.
Yeah. Ice yellow is great as well because it boosts saturation and brightness at the same time. Yeah. It's quite potent as well. You don't really need a lot of it.
Yeah, colour.
I did
I use that for boosting like warmth in colours and saturation. I literally use that all the time, and I use like blue horror as the reverse of that.
Like
so
the desaturation.
Yeah, so I use because it's cold. Because it's cold in temperature. It still boosts. It's still good to boost colours with, but it keeps the cold temperature. Which I
used the blue horror to on the Gurg that I'm painting because he's like they've got that like decayed flesh sort of thing to try and get like all the colour and life out of it.
Yeah.
So I used the normal flesh tones that I would use. So I've got the right sort of balance in terms of contrast. But I added the blue horror to all of them, so it just completely desaturated.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's
I think on the odd occasion, like in the instances you're saying, when it makes it too yellow, the only other colour I use to boost would be like a Vallejo model colour ivory. I use that.
Citadel Ushabti Bone.
Yeah, that's quite good as well.
Yeah.
Or Screaming Skull.
Yeah, I've got a couple of those colours. But yeah, and using the eyeshadows kind of a specular type highlight as well.
Yeah.
Different little bits and pieces. It didn't work for when I was trying to do I don't really want to talk about non-metallic metal too much more, but when I was adding that to the blues and the greys, it kind of didn't really work.
No.
So I had to sort of go back and add white to it to sort of push that colour up. But overall, I really enjoyed painting it, so I'm sure you'll see it.
Do you want to learn how to become a better miniature painter, improve your skills, and have the best looking army on the tabletop? Well, now you can with the Siege Studios Patreon. You'll gain instant access to our catalogue of over 350 easy to follow step-by-step tutorials covering a huge variety of colour schemes, painting styles, and techniques, with everything from beginner-focused foundation tutorials to full character masterclasses. Plus, with the team adding new lessons every single week, you'll never run out of techniques to learn or skills to improve. And if that's not enough, you also get access to our critique clinic, where you can get video feedback from us on your miniatures with advice on how to progress your painting, so you'll always know what to work on next and see improvements as fast as possible. So if you're ready to take the next steps in miniature painting, head to patreon.com/Siege Studios or check the link in this episode's description. So on the back of last week's episode, which was the three of us as well, wasn't it?
Yes.
It was, yeah.
Yes.
James was having a little bit of a, should we say, dip in motivation.
It was quite nice to see, wasn't it?
It was a pothole in the road of painting. Yeah.
I
Hit the
have to say,
pothole.
it was quite nice watching the master struggle.
The master. Come on, look. Come on, look. Don't be nice.
Well, no, it just sort of shows that no matter what your level, there's always something to learn, isn't there?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think there's like.
Well, I actually think it's someone as someone as passionate as James and as ravenous about Warhammer as James.
Yeah.
Even they can experience dips in motivation.
It happens to all of us. Like, like I'm nothing special when it comes to painting. I know you said what you said, but like there's people that are like way better than me, and they're like, they still have it as well. Like, and I think the thing is like, it leads on to this topic really well. We're going to talk about for this episode. Like, I think one of the things is just, you can just park it, which is what I did with Lhykis. I parked it for a little bit and then return to it when you're feeling more, your mind's with it, or that you've had time to reflect and think, look, I've tackled this the wrong way, or I've done this, or this hasn't worked out. I'm going to try something different. Like, I think you do need that little pause, and painting isn't something that like everybody enjoys as an aspect of this hobby. A lot of people like the gaming, and the painting is like an absolute chore and slog for them. And I completely understand that. But if you kind of in the middle ground and you're like, I want to paint, but I absolutely really, really bugs me and stuff. I think a lot
of people are just like time poor and such.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get to some of the ways that you tackled it kind of as we go along. But I think one of the main things to speak about as well is positivity is like a great thing, but I think it's nice to kind of normalize this as well. Because in terms of like content, everyone wants to surround themselves with positivity, and we're not at all looking to be negative with it, just kind of trying to put a positive spin on it, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's good to normalize the fact of, especially in like hobbies and things, where it's not like your whole lifeblood, like you've got a life outside of that.
Sure.
And those things do impact how that goes for you.
Hence not painting base rims.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So I think the sort of topic this week is how to enjoy painting Warhammer when you don't enjoy painting Warhammer. So we're going to discuss this kind of in a few ways, but I myself have, I'd say, struggled quite a lot over the years with motivation. Joe's spoken about it on past episodes as well. You've experienced it recently. I think it's quite a normal thing, as I just said a moment ago. So I would like to talk about maybe some of the struggles that we've had in the hobby before and how we overcame those, and maybe how we kind of go about avoiding them now, certain things we do. And then maybe just some tips for if you're someone who just doesn't like painting at all, because as we know, we've spoken about this kind of the three pillars of the hobby, right? Some people are just on the lore gaming side of the fence. And like you said, James, painting can be a chore for some of those people. So maybe some ways that you can make painting a lot more fun, just kind of generally. And then hopefully everyone gets some sort of value out of that as well. James, do you want to speak about kind of the recent difficulty in a little bit more detail?
Yeah,
just from like a mindset perspective. I know you struggled with the model in a physical sense of painting it, but maybe just where that left your head at.
It was a real push and pull for me personally, purely because I said it from the moment I saw the miniature. Like, I loved it. I was like, wow, this is incredible. And like getting it in hand and then seeing all those things that caused me to think, oh, actually, how have I got to tackle that, or how have I got to tackle that? My normal process of like working out how I'm going to effectively break it down or do the different aspects or look at where the details are. I always say this. I know I mentioned it on the last episode, but I really wanted to go into a bit more detail on it for me. And it was really integral to this whole experience with it, is the thing I neglected to do. So I was so keen to make it and obviously see what it looked like that I neglected to do a thing where I build the model and blue tack it all to a point, and then I'll check everything with a damp brush, and see obviously where I can access and can't. I half did that, but I was so keen to get on with it. And I think if I'd have just taken a pause and gone, do your normal process, don't get distracted by this lovely shiny new thing, it would have allowed me to then go, actually, I shouldn't put that on, or I should put that on because I can access it, all that kind of stuff. And that really would have, I think, alleviated a lot of the problems I experienced with it.
So in a weird way, your excitement and positivity for something triggered.
I was ravenous to paint it,
but that triggered a sort of low point in the hobby for you.
It did, because I was like, why is this not going the way I want it to? Why am I having these? Like, not in the sense of the painting, just in the sense of like getting through it. I just found I was pinballing a lot more with it, like jumping from bit to bit to bit to bit to bit to bit to bit, and that kind of like made me lose sight of what I was actually trying to do, I think, and that's when the frustration then starts to kick in. That's where I had to like put it down, take the dogs for a walk, not look at it for a day.
Frustration's a slippery slope, isn't it? I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. Like certain projects just really,
and
really irritate
and then it's just hanging over you. Like it just hangs over you, and it's just like, but I think, from the time I had like last episode to now, like, I've had a decent amount of time to just like think, right, let's go back to the drawing board with the way I'm going to actually do it. Because actually, believe it or not, the process of painting a miniature is very separate to the actual painting of it. And what I mean by that is sitting there and doing the actual physical painting is one thing, but the order that you do it in and the way that it all functions and goes together and how stuff works with each other is a completely, I've literally realised now it's more of an overlaying thing that I need to put probably more thought into that initially before I even pick up the brush with any paint on it for the model.
Yeah.
And I think being so excited and distracted by, wow, this amazing shiny new thing, I absolutely can't wait to get this done, it completely distracted me from the normal way of my process, not the physical painting, just the process of tackling the parts of the model. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I actually had a bit of a similar experience to that because I didn't really speak about it at the time, but a few weeks ago I was talking about the scale model car that I built.
Yeah.
And the sort of fun that I had with that. And because overall it was such an enjoyable experience, this is like almost a forgettable part of it to me. But at the time I was having some frustration as well because my excitement to start that project, I kind of like tripped myself up in a way because painting scale models can be quite different to painting Warhammer in the sense of you've got this push and pull back and forth with building the model and painting it because certain parts get concealed and you can't access them. So you kind of have to look through the instruction book and work out, okay, well, I need to paint like this part of the dashboard first before I build it because then I'm not going to be able to get a paintbrush in there and you've kind of got to reverse engineer it.
Your project on that car was literally like my analogy where I say if car companies made cars the way that most miniature painters paint miniatures out of business, you literally had to think about the dashboard goes in, the floor pan goes in. You literally had to think about the process.
But with that, I ended up making some huge mistakes with painting the body of the car.
Right.
And this is more just in relation to like the frustrations and stuff that you had with it, where I was working with like products that I don't normally use, and it's like a scale that I'm not familiar with and whatnot. And you're going for this like realism, not this all edge highlights and recess shading and all that. And I'd sprayed all the body with primer, a different airbrush primer than I normally use. We spoke about that last week as well. But sprayed it all with the primer. It was looking good. I was really happy with it. Got all excited for it. Sprayed all the body work. Got the color on there. I'm like, brilliant. It's going well. Then, as I was handling the model, I realized that as I was rubbing and holding the body, bits of paint were starting to like flake off because the primer just hadn't bonded well enough. Even though I'd scrubbed it with a toothbrush and like soap and everything, let it all dry, I'd like really taken my time with it, but it just didn't go the way I thought it was. And then that led to stripping off all the paint, priming it again, and there was inevitably some spots where like little recesses where paint had gotten in, sitting there with sandpaper, sanding it. Like, okay, let's not like get bogged down with this. We'll carry on. Went through the primer again, went through the spraying again, put the varnish on, put the clear coat, hard clear coat on. As it was drying, I accidentally gave it a bit of a whack with my thumb, put a beautiful thumbprint in the side of this thick acrylic varnish that I built up.
Nice.
Out came the sandpaper, had to sand it all down again.
It was like a real car restoration.
And I got to a point where I was like, you know when you like building IKEA furniture and you just know you're like a razor's edge away from just smashing the whole house to pieces.
Yeah.
Well, all George needed was a couple of miniature crash dummies, and he would have thrown it against the wall to reenact the
True.
crash
Yeah,
test.
100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think
I've done that in real life. It didn't go well.
Oh, no.
everyone feels like that though sometimes with the kit, don't they? Surely, I mean,
Yeah.
there's always.
I'm not gonna lie.
something in
There
the
were
kit.
points with that Lhykis model where I was like, "This thing is gonna learn how to fly at some point."
Yeah,
Yeah, but
definitely with the building.
yeah,
Sometimes.
you just have to,
Do you have any like methods for keeping cool in those scenarios?
put it down,
yeah, walk
step away, and do anything else but go near the model. I think
Yeah.
that's even that translates not just to the making of it or anything like that. It translates to the painting. Like I say, there's a reason why I always say about having a fresh eye break. Like go make yourself a cup of tea. If you've got a dog, take it for a walk, like, you know, or anything else. If you've got like some I know it sounds silly, but if you've got some washing up to do that's going to kill 20 minutes, like,
yeah, do it.
Yeah.
do it just
Yeah.
so that you can like decompress, you know.
Yeah, 'cause
I
if you-
find that
like-
I need longer breaks than that. Sometimes I'm like, I'm going to bed.
Oh, my-
This is over.
Like 20
Like,
minutes was like
Yeah.
a minor frustration.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
when it's like this thing is like it's like a battle, like a day or two. Like that's why for
Yeah.
me, like it's you know,
After I'd thunked the varnish, I literally put it down my desk and was like, this is a tomorrow problem. I can't be having
this is a
this.
next
Not doing
year
this anymore.
problem. Yeah,
Put that back in
Yeah.
the box.
yeah.
What was you going to say, Paul?
Well, I was going to say, especially if you're frustrated whilst you're painting, because I'm like this, I'm painting something, it's not going how I want it to go. So you really have got to stop painting it. Otherwise, you just make it worse.
I don't
Yeah.
know what it is though, but do you find that you can't stop? And like as you're frustrated, you're almost like do it more out of spite.
I think the frustration and let's look, the frustration, the anger, even the resentment, which are all really strong words, but they are the feelings and emotions that you go through when things aren't going right when you're doing that, because you want to get the result and the finish or the execution. And I think that's one of the things. Like, I think all that negative energy, to sound really deep, it just builds up and does affect your painting. I always talk about this in classes, like mindset behind the brush is like super, super important. And like, I don't think it's spoken about anywhere near as enough in our industry.
I think
like,
as well, like because it's your escapism tool,
yeah,
you don't realize how much real life stuff creeps into your like reality when you're doing that. Like to use a completely different analogy, I was in the gym and I was speaking to my trainer, and I didn't realize that if I'd had like a hard day at work, I didn't realize that was impacting my workouts in the sense of like I physically wasn't as strong. It was like yesterday I could lift this weight just fine, but today I just like can't do it. It's like, what, have I gotten weaker overnight? And it's like, no, because subconsciously like that stress and like other things that are going on in your life just kind of creep in and they have a physical impact. And where you're working with your hands in the physical sense with this, like I do think that there is some connection there.
No, definitely. I always say it, like, for me, I would always recommend the mindset behind the brush being, I'm trying to paint neatest, sharpest, smoothest, best I can. Even if you're painting a weathered thing, even if you're painting like whatever stylistic execution you're painting, if your mindset is sharpest, neatest, best, smoothest, whatever I can behind the brush, it does translate. Because if you're accepting mediocrity, if you're saying, oh, that'll do, that's okay, oh, can someone see that? Oh, all those kind of things, they do translate to execution not being as good. Like it's just how it works. And
depends
like,
on what your goal is, I guess, to a degree. Like if you're looking to improve your painting, I'd definitely say that that's true. But if you're just going for like pure enjoyment factor, I'd argue that's not
that
necessarily
doesn't matter.
important.
Like, yeah, if I'm talking when I say that about that thought process behind the brush, that is totally geared towards improving your painting.
Yeah.
Like if you're just trying to paint an army really quickly, it's like you don't need to have that mindset.
But I think like the mindset going into that is important though, because if you're not relaxed, I think no matter how much you force yourself to think in that way, it's not going to translate through your hands in the literal sense. Like if you go, I really want to improve my painting and I really want to focus and I want to paint the best, smoothest, neatest, sharpest I can off the back of a really stressful day.
It's not going to happen.
And there's like, distractions in the room and like the dog's barking.
It's not going to
and
happen, yeah.
the environment's not quite right and you've only got 35 minutes to paint tonight because you're running a bit late rather than the full hour you'd normally have, so you start rushing a little bit. It doesn't work.
No, but I think it's a bit more granular than that as well. Like there are, and this, I know obviously we're talking about, if you hate painting Warhammer, what can you do to improve it or whatever. But like, I also think it sort of dilutes down to individual like painting techniques. So as an example, if I've had like a more stressful day, I probably wouldn't want to do loads of intricate multi-staged edge highlighting because that's something that requires me to be in a less stressed like mindset, if that makes sense, or how I feel. Whereas if I do have a more stressful day, doing some blending, doing some brush weathering is it chills me out massively because
there's specific techniques you enjoy.
Because it's not only that I enjoy them, it's just the physical execution of them isn't as mentally intense, or the refinement level doesn't necessarily have to be as intense.
Right.
When you're doing it with blending, and if you're using glazes, the glazes are really thin, so you're not putting as much effect.
And maybe every painter will have their own kind of version of those
exactly. That's what I'm saying. So
yeah.
there might be a specific stylistic execution or technique or process that you as a painter find really like chilled, like you can just do
it's
it.
almost like meditation, isn't it?
I guess so. I don't know, like
a Zen thing.
You could zoom out a little bit of that even more and just say some people find building models really enjoyable.
Exactly, yeah.
Or some people find doing the base coats really fun. Other people, that's just like a means to an end. So everyone's kind of got their own little thing that's the kind of therapeutic Zen, not concentrating mode of the hobby.
And that could be any. I mean, for me, like I had a situation like this Lhykis thing is not the first time it's happened. I mean, it's the first time it's happened in the sense of like a model that I was like super like I want to paint it, blah blah blah. Like I've had situations before where I've been like midway through a project where I felt like rubbish because I've just been churning away through all this
like
stuff.
burnt out.
Yeah. So I had a situation where I was doing a project and I was like, I really just I need to get off of this for a little bit because it's just like it's too intense, or like I've just the steepness of the climb is just too much for the minute for how I feel, or whatever, blah blah. So I literally just started making a load of bases. Like I just started making like my own sort of base, like not even for a project or anything. It's just something I like building. I've always liked tinkering with stuff and building stuff and like converting and all that kind of stuff. Is like one of my favorite things. I love painting, obviously, but converting and making stuff physically is like something I really enjoy. I'd always wanted to make like some bases, just as a specific sort of like look of bases. I think it was some trench bases. I think I just started making some, and that sort of like became like. Whereas it was a day, it became like I was doing it for like a full weekend. I was just like, oh, I'm just going to make these bases. And I really got into it, and it completely pulled me away from all the negativity that I was experiencing with the project and gave me something that I was really positive about, that I then thought, cool, okay, well, if I ever want to do those bases again or make something else, I've got something that to show what I can do. Does that make sense? So that in itself for me was like a really good weekend that I was still hobbying, still doing the thing that I enjoyed, but it didn't have any of the stuff that was ongoing with the big other projects I was working on. And I could return to that project
whenever you needed to.
Whenever I needed to add more to it. But it gave me a nice stopgap to then, when I came back to the other project I was working on previously, going, okay, cool. And it actually, one of the funniest things I think I remember from that experience was while I was making those bases, I was actually, even though I wasn't really thinking about, I was just cutting stuff, sticking it down, doing all this other stuff, blah, blah, blah. But while I was doing that, I was actually thinking about this project and thinking, can I tackle this differently? If I thought about this, actually that might work. And it gave me a really good stopgap to then approach it again, but with more ways of potentially making it get to fruition better.
So your hands are kind of on autopilot.
Yeah.
Chipping away at the basing. Meanwhile, your brain's got some room to think about the project.
Yeah. I think you do need that scope to get away from it, if you follow me. I think that's something that choosing something else to do that's still in the thing that you love, but isn't as taxing mentally on you. Do you know what I mean?
If you're a miniature painter, you'll know how important it is to have the right tools for the hobby, but it doesn't matter what brushes or paints you have if you can't see what you're doing in the first place. If you want to improve your painting, contorting yourself under a small, repurposed lamp from around the house, giving yourself a backache and straining your eyes just isn't going to cut it. That's why one of the biggest upgrades I've ever made to my painting setup was my Onyx painting lamp from Native Lighting. Its articulating arm allows me to sit in the perfect painting position for those long hobby sessions, and its super bright 2200 lumen, dimmable LEDs cast soft and diffused light on my models without any harsh shadows. As someone with a very small hobby space, by far my favourite feature is its adjustable mounting clamp, which attaches to the side of my desk, maximising my free workspace. And its daylight colour balance temperature of 6500K gives you the confidence that colours you are painting are accurate and your miniatures will pop on the tabletop. To upgrade your setup to the equipment we rely on here at Siege Studios, head to the link in this episode's description or go to siegestudios.co.uk/shop.
I sometimes find that when I'm painting something or getting frustrated with it, you start to doubt my own ability.
Yeah.
So especially with faces and things, I think sometimes if I get frustrated with it, I think, why can't I do this? And it's not that I can't do it. I can, But for whatever reason, that particular, like you said earlier, you know, there could be other stresses or other things going on or whatever. For whatever reason, today is not the day for painting faces, so do it another day. It's not that I can't. I always do that though. Why can't I do this? So it's an almost immediate cancellation of my own abilities and then that in turn kind of, you sort of setting like a little snowball off, aren't you? Sort of doubting yourself,
get in your own head.
Yeah, and then I just think, well, and there's been times where I've had for example, about a year ago, I think I started a Captain Space Marine model in Gravis armor. I'd sprayed it an undercoat color. I think it was red actually. And then I started working on the face. I just couldn't. For some reason, it just wasn't clicking for me, and that's how it stayed to this day. I've put it away and I've never gone back to it because I just got so frustrated with it, and that's put me off painting the rest of it. So that sort of feeling has been so strong that I've just like, I'm not doing that model. That's it. I've had enough of it. I'll just put it away. It's in a baggie, you know, built, undercoated with half a painted face, just in a drawer.
Thing is, you could just paint a couple of separate heads, and because of the way the heads join with the bodies, painting a head that gives you that victory could then be like the spark that makes you go, do you know what, I'm going to finish that model.
Yeah. Also, what I could do is just paint any other part of that model.
Yeah.
But I know I can paint quite easily. You know,
it may even spur you on to then if you paint that model, it may even spur you on to go, right, well, all I've got to do is paint the face.
That's
and
it,
your whole mindset and approach to
which
it
is what I did
different.
with this marshal. Because normally, any character or any model that's got a face, I would normally paint the face first. But if the face doesn't look right, I've then got to look at that face for the rest of the entire model. So this time I thought I'm going to do it the other way around. So I almost, other than the base work, I painted his face. That was the last thing I did, and actually that went a little bit better than usual. So I'm quite happy with how that way round of doing it.
A face is a recurring issue that you struggle with.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, that's why I used to sort of always paint them first to get it done right. Whilst the enthusiasm for painting was there, to conquer that face and get it looking good. And then I knew it was kind of done and out the way. I didn't have to worry about it then until the end. You know, didn't have to worry about it at all then because it was done.
Because I've had some certain things that, like you said, I really related to the doubt, and like you said, like, oh, I can't do this. And when I was maybe a bit earlier on in my journey of painting, I was trying to lock in more confidence with myself and like have less fear of painting certain materials and surfaces and types of miniatures and trying to like instill a bit of confidence in myself. One of the things that I always struggled with was faces, and it was like the gap of quality between the rest of my work and the face was quite large. And it was like, I can paint everything else like fairly okay. But when it just happens the first time, you're like, oh, that was a bit frustrating, whatever. But when it's like, you might notice there are recurring themes in your painting of certain techniques, surfaces, materials, things that you struggle with. And when you start to notice a pattern, I think that's a good time to kind of stop and just focus on that for a little bit longer. Completely. So with the faces specifically, I remember very, very vividly saying, I need to just learn how to do this properly, because every single time I paint a face, I'm tackling it in a different way. I'm looking up a different tutorial on YouTube and I just don't know what I'm doing. I have no muscle memory, no confidence in my own skill. So I literally sat there, got the box of, Primaris intercessors. They come with like, what, like 10,
loads
15
spare heads,
I literally just sat there and primed them all, like got them all off the sprue, pinned all of them, primed all of them, base coated all of them. And I just went one by one painting them. And I was like, I'm not going to stop doing this until I get good at it. Until I'm at the point where I can turn the tutorial off. Until I'm at the point where I can paint certain skin tones just myself. I spent a couple of weeks just doing that. I mean, I was obviously like going back to other projects and stuff. But it was like, and once I'd done that, once you've done the repetition and once you've instilled the confidence in yourself, you can take that self-doubt out of your head because it's getting in your way. Like once I could finally switch that part of my brain off, it allowed me to actually do it, because oftentimes you are actually capable of doing it. But because you're kind of telling yourself you can't.
No, right? Yeah.
It's impeding your ability to actually do
plus it. I want to try and run before I can walk with faces. So, in my mind, I have this sort of grand image of, this marshal's face being sort of grizzled and sort of his cheeks being a bit rosy where he's been he's been sort of windswept and he's got a red nose and, sort of graphic. I think, well, I could do all that and I can put all these glaze these colours in. And then it just ends up looking a bit of a up with a mess.
Yeah.
I think, I should at least get the skin tones down first, and how it actually looks like a face and not like a weird blotchy, blobby things with two eyes, ski whiff in there.
But I think with anything, like whether it's faces or not, you've got to break down stuff and put it in the realms of your ability. I think it's good to push yourself, but when you start going like way out of what you're capable of, it's always going to look worse. I've always said something really, really simple that's done well will always look better than like shooting for the stars, doing some crazy techniques and stuff and missing.
Yeah.
And it will give you the confidence to say, if you really just stripped it back, if you're just, we'll use the faces again, if you're just awful at painting faces and you just go, right, I'm just going to do one where it's just smooth base coat and not a wash over it, and it's going to look really, really simple, and that's fine. Then you go to the next one. Okay, I'm going to do a wash, a highlight on top of that as well. And then just working it up before you go, okay, I don't really know how to paint faces. I've never really painted a proper face before. I'm going to give him 5 o'clock shadow, and he's going to have all this like makeup in his eyes and the grit and the dirt. And he's like, Urukai handprint on the side of his head, Aquila on the side of your head. If you set it up too high, you're just setting yourself up for failure. So I think it's really, really good to push yourself.
Agree.
But comfortably in something that's actually approachable.
Baby steps.
So I had that exact same thing. So earlier in, I think it was early 24, I went on Liam Dempsey's channel and done an interview with Liam about obviously Siege and some other bits and bobs. And like he asked me like about my painting, and I said to him in 24, like, what's one thing that I think I'm really crap at painting? And I was like, cloth. And I spent all of 24 working on cloth, and that's the thing that now I feel way more confident with, because I've literally painted loads and loads of capes and cloth and materials and texture and all this stuff. I've literally spent, that's the one thing that I was like, right, I'm going to focus on that as like my thing that I want to turn the dial on and get better at. And like Georgia said, like multiple repetitions and doing it over and over and over and over and over and over again will give you that improvement visually, and also in the muscle memory of when you next have a face or a cloth or a cape or a cloth and go, oh, I know how to do that. Like, and that, it's that when you do it once and just get disheartened and disappointed with the execution you've done, and then what that does is it creates the acronym which I always say, which is false expectations appearing real or fear. It creates that fear of then approaching it again, because you think, oh, that's how it's going to be again, rather than, well, I'm going to look at that one, see what I've done not so good, and go, I'm going to try everything I can on this next one to not do that again on this one. And then that they are the steps which then lead from you going from execution 1, which looks you're unhappy with, to execution 15, 16, 20, 30, 40, that is like, wow, I'm really, really happy. That looks realistic. That looks great. That looks like cloth. That looks like flesh. That looks like eyes. That's the way that you do it. You kind of have to be a bit, not horrible to yourself. You kind of have to do the thing that you don't like over and over and over and over again. But it does give you the return. Do you know what I mean? It does give you the reward.
No, I mean, I did a Blood Angels captain not so long ago. It was the one from the Leviathan.
Terminator.
The Terminator one. Yeah. I remember. Yep.
And that was one of my better faces, I think. I thought I was quite happy with that. So what's happened between that and this? So I think I probably do need to just, because I don't paint faces often enough. I don't. That's probably what it is. I don't paint them. I suppose I actively try and avoid them, maybe a little bit. I suppose subconsciously. So perhaps what I do need to do is just. I mean, everyone's got loads of spare heads.
Well, I'll tell you what. Do you know what you can do? You can go on the Siege bit store and you can get a load of bits, Paul.
Yeah.
And then you were always surrounded by bits here, so you can literally get some heads out of the Siege bit store on eBay, and then you can.
Shameless plug.
I know, right?
I don't know what you're talking about.
But yeah, I'll have to sort of just get a little plastic sprue set up with some heads on it, and just.
You need to make my mid-episode hobby hack and make a head rotisserie. That's what you need to make.
A head rotisserie.
It's the factual name. Patent pending.
That's a throwback to one of the very early episodes of this podcast.
Patent pending. I'll tell you what. I know George is going to hate me for doing this, but I'll put a picture of said head rotisserie there, and then George.
And I shall observe it.
Yeah. And then you can make your very own. And then
it's basically, for the audio listeners, it's having a painting holder of sorts. In James's case, a plastic shot glass, and just putting a whole bunch of pins in it, and then attaching a whole bunch of heads to that.
So
and then as you're going to the next head, you rotate it.
You rotate it, yeah.
All right,
so as you do each step, you can rotate the head rotisserie.
So I can't just hold my brush still and the thing rotates and every face gets.
You can
a
do
slap of
that
paint.
if you want, Paul. Like I've got visions of Paul putting it on like a model rotating display thing, and he'll just be following it round.
Just a conveyor belt, like a sushi conveyor belt on his
This is rubbish. Just hold that.
Yeah, but
yeah.
I'll tell you what. I'll do you a favour. I'll make you your
You're gonna
very
paint
own.
my faces for me?
No, I didn't. I did not. I did not agree to that at all. So I'll make you your own head rotisserie, and I'll bring it in for you.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
What a good boss.
I know,
You have
right?
your very own
That's it.
head rotisserie.
There you go.
Looking forward to it.
I'll bring it in for you.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I should perhaps that would be something I have a practice at this year.
Do it. Yeah,
is,
do it.
For sure.
painting faces a bit more often.
Yeah, do it.
I think as well as like you said about it's just this whole muscle memory thing.
It is. Yeah.
I think I'm getting. I mean, the muscle memory for armor and other bits and pieces that all seems comes quite natural, I suppose. I'm sort of working on glazing and things, but I should perhaps get the basics down for faces a bit more.
Yeah.
But I'm always wondered as well which way around to do the eyes first and then the face, or the face and then the eyes. Because I always think as well, if I do the face really cool and then muck up the eyeballs, I've then got to try and correct the eyelids. And
I don't think you should think of it in as black and white as that. I would say you can do it in the middle. You can do it like
I've seen people paint the
What do
eyes,
you mean?
the undercoat of the head,
Yeah.
paint the eyes first, and then paint all the skin around it. I've seen
That's
people
what I
do
mean.
that.
That's
Yeah,
what
yeah.
that's what I do with
Yeah.
the Marshall. Yeah.
the way I like to do it is paint all of the skin, do a few shading layers, get some like color and tones into the face, then paint the eyes. Then I've still got time to tidy it up before I go to do the highlighting.
Yeah,
You could do it.
exactly the same.
You could do it literally first, but it means you've got to spend the rest of the time painting the face very, very carefully.
Yeah.
And it'll be difficult to shade around the eyes because when you add those shades, they're going to flood the white eyes that you've already painted, and they're going to in effect disappear.
The eyes did go purple at one point. It's fine.
He was just in the old inn before we went out to battle. That was it.
He's
Yeah.
had a
So
few.
there
He
you
had a
go.
few. Yeah. That's why his cheeks are rosy and his nose.
And if you didn't sit him perfectly centre on the horse, he looks like he's a bit swayed a
about
little
to fall
bit.
off
So,
anyway, yeah.
so there you go.
But yeah, I'll definitely give that a go. This sort of over the next few months is just
Definitely, yeah.
Just doing
Well,
it,
I'll
but,
get that.
you know.
I'll get that head rotisserie made and brought in for you.
get it in there. I'll
Yeah,
have that.
you'll need to Barry the Bosch to drill the heads on the underneath, but
Yeah,
other
that's
than that,
fine,
you'll be fine.
Should we bookend the sort of mindset stuff there? Let's go purely just on fun factor. So, what are some things you can do that are maybe the best bang for the buck in terms of fun?
Ironically, getting the face painted because once you've got a good face painted, it's like and I mean they don't actually take that long, depending on what you want to do with it, obviously. But I think there is it's so backwards. Like if I paint a good face, I think that's great, and then I'm happy for the rest of the model.
It's because it's the focal point.
But do you find them fun to paint?
Yes and no. Sometimes it depends. For me, if the face is well sculpted, then yes. But if a face is a bit flattish and it's not
and
really well defined,
you've essentially got to do like what
it's a skill issue, George.
like what you can do in makeup and you can do contouring.
Yeah.
You've got to kind of do that on a lesser sculpted face
Yeah.
just to give the illusion of depth and the muscular structure
Yeah.
and all that. Which I get
Yeah.
that.
Maybe just to rephrase the question slightly, what are some techniques and things you can do that are really, really fun but have a really, really like high payoff? So for the amount of effort that they are, they're really, really rewarding.
I like making scenery out of foam board and a hot glue gun. Like I literally love making scenery. I think it's so easy. Craft knife, some sheets of foam board, hot glue gun, and just make some scenery.
When you say scenery, do you mean like terrain for boards
terrain
or
for boards,
like basing?
yeah, terrain for boards, and like even all basing. Like I said to you about the basing, I like making the environment and the things that the models engage with, because the way I look at it is this: if you make some really cool bases, or if you make a bit of scenery or something like that, then gives you a motivation and reason to go, I've made that now. I want to put my models on it, and then my models aren't done. So then I like doing stuff like that. I said I like crafting stuff and like making stuff. Like,
do you think that's because there's quite a quick reward?
Yeah,
for-
the ROI is
yeah.
huge. Like, with like it's not got any of the time or labor involved with painting a miniature, but you get something really cool really quick. And I think it's an instant. I say instant. It's an easier and quicker win.
Do you want to give some examples for the sort of things that you would be building in this scenario?
Yeah. So like I haven't done it in a long time, as in like making scenery, but I used to make like bunkers for like my Marines. I made a trench line before. I've made like when I used to live in St Albans, I set up the gaming club in St Albans, and I made loads of boards and scenery for there. So I had like a huge period of time where I was making scenery like constantly. Like I do really enjoy making scenery and like doing basing stuff. I always talk about it, but I think like basing and like making scenery, it's like gardening but for miniature painters. Like I genuinely, I enjoy it hugely. I think the environment that the models go within, it's a setting, it sets the scene of where that model is, and I think when you get that right, it then spurs you on to then paint the miniature. Does that make sense? And that's the way I reason why I kind of enjoy that. But yeah, I think that as a thing is just
so kind of like peripheral stuff kind of around
painting
the models specifically.
That works for me, and that's just me, but that works. That works for me.
I'll tell you a great little thing for almost instant awesomeness is dirty down rust effect. That's so much fun just to slap on stuff and then just sit there watching it transform. It's like, oh, it looks like real rust.
Paul's having another varnish moment right now.
He's going to just whack some varnish on it.
Just wax some dirt, put me dirty down in everything in his house. That she's dirty down. It's like rust.
They are really good. They're just fun. They're just great fun to use, especially for like, for Death Guard and stuff or anything else that you would just want a little rusty look. They're just great fun. You just whack it on and you can literally sit there and watch it transforming before your very eyes. It's like magic.
Do you want to get even more from these podcast episodes? Patreon is the place to get exclusive Paint Perspective content every single week, including extended versions of the podcast featuring bonus segments you won't see anywhere else. Plus, as a member, you'll get exclusive Discord access, including monthly hobby hangouts with us, opportunities to ask your questions on upcoming shows, plus all of our podcast content completely ad-free. To learn more, head to the link in this episode's description or go to patreon.com/Siege Studios. I think similar to you, I think anything that's got a bit of a novelty factor to it.
Yeah, it is a complete novelty thing. Yeah.
Some of it I think it can be a bit gimmicky and not necessarily like super useful, but I think any sort of like new, I hate the idea of like just buying stuff for the sake of like trying to get yourself out of that, but anything that's just kind of like slightly different or a bit of a twist on how you're doing it, even if it was as simple as like, I'm going to paint a model only in black and white, or I'm going to paint a color scheme that I haven't done before, or I'm going to paint a completely different like system from what I used to. That's why I enjoyed the scale model so much. It was like just that novelty factor of it just being a bit different from what you're normally doing. And you're kind of getting the fun and thrill of using that tool and seeing how it works.
Yeah.
Even something simple like, say you converted to the power of electricity and you're going to do like drilling out some barrels like James, just the novelty of like drilling all the barrels with a drill instead of like a pin vise, just mixing it up and doing something a bit novel, I think can be really, really fun and in a sense really, really rewarding.
Yeah. Or even just, I know it might sound a bit over the top, but even just doing a little bit of sculpting, not like a massive amount, but just even like on Death Guard, you just sculpt one little extra tentacle on there. Guts, anything. And it's so easy to do. Yeah. It's such an easy little
especially
thing
when you've got like stuff like you've got rollers as well now, so you can actually you can make pipes and things like that.
Tentacle rollers that just put little grooves on everything. Even just if you want to do, just sculpt a boil. Just a round blob, squish it on, paint it yellow.
They have like rollers and stuff as well, don't they, for basing material?
Basing material, you got rollers and things like that as well. Yeah,
simple stuff. There's
loads of cool stuff that you can do. But I think things like that. I think sometimes when you do talk about the overriding topic for this episode, like I think when you do hit that lull, or if you have got that apprehension or that dislike for painting, but you still want to get something done, I think just do things that you are going to find enjoyable. Like, as I said, like there's loads of different types of stylistic execution and techniques of painting. Like I always say this, I think dry brushing is heavily stigmatized as being like a basic or not a good thing. Obviously, like Byron from AO is like prolific in when he's dry brushing and what he does. Like like that's a really quick way of painting that you can still paint to a decent standard. Like I would say it, obviously you got a slap chop, which a lot of people obviously like, some people don't, etc. But again, that gives you a really quick execution.
And again, that's kind of a novelty factor as well, isn't it? It's a different way of doing stuff.
Exactly. So I think there's like the
oils we spoke about as well. When I had loads of fun doing the Imperialis project because of, again, the novelty factor of using the oils, which I hadn't done before, and seeing how they behave and like seeing the quick reward of all the paint flowing around like magic. And
well, two things, right? I had a friend a long time ago who really didn't like painting. He just wanted to play the games, which was fine. But obviously you got to put the models together to use them.
Yeah.
So, but he also didn't like the unpainted look. So he would spray them black and then just dry brush them white. And then that was it. But actually, just doing that, you could see all the details on the model. They were painted, and actually they looked quite dynamic on the battlefield, having all these, like you said, like a black and white kind of style. And that's how we just did everything. He did everything he had. It was just black and white, just dry brushed, and it's quick. He had all his army painted, and he was quite happy with that. And it was quite cool. And the other thing was, speed paints or contrast paints. It's how I got back into doing this. So they're a good kind of like stepping stone.
Yeah,
especially if you like, if you get past that, if you're paint, if you spray it black and then you're doing the white, whack some contrast on top. Do a heavier white dry brush, and then perhaps the next step is perhaps just a little bit of contrast here and there.
Yeah.
And then after that, you can then learn more about edge highlighting or
all the other things.
Pushing it further, which is what how I got back into it.
And if you don't like that, what you can do is you can cut out all the Marines on the back of the boxes, because they're now 1-to-1 scale with the models. Stick them on bases.
Put some blue tack on the
base. Bit of sprue. Yeah.
Do you remember?
I know what you're going to say. The Carvel Dreadnought in second edition. Yeah.
And you used to get killer cans.
Official
like
model.
well.
Yeah. You could. Yeah. Official model.
Thing.
So you could make all your army out of box art quality pictures that are 1-to-1 scale on the back of the box.
If your mate buys some Space Marines,
ask for the
packaging.
Box. Ask for the packaging. Yeah.
I mean, that's a good idea.
Yeah. If you really hate painting, that's the way around it.
Yeah. But
and you still get. And what you can do is you can put the cardboard thing and do the basing.
Do the basing.
And the basing. You have some good bases with the cardboard.
You catch that at the right angle. It's going to look very realistic.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Only see it from the front, obviously.
Exactly.
But I used to sort of sit there and watch a chap called War Hipster.
Oh no,
Have you heard War
yeah.
Hipster? And he was always he does everything with contrasts.
Yeah.
Everything. Just white undercoat, contrast. And then but from that, he then helps you to take, like, you can get things battle ready.
Yep.
Just straight to the tabletop. But if you want to go the next stage up, he sort of pushes it further.
Yeah.
So, there's loads of ways to get into it, even if you don't really enjoy the painting process. Things are there to sort of help you along a little bit, and not spend too much time getting involved in it if you're not really that way inclined.
I said I wanted to do another Iron Warrior, just one single Iron Warrior, just for fun. And like I said, about since watching the episode that you guys spoke about oils, like, I really want to give it a go, and I'm keen to do it. Like,
to what level? Like,
because the thing is,
for shading.
I had if anyone doesn't know, there is a video somewhere on that channel about it. But I sold an Iron Warrior army that I'd done, and then it got stolen from the person I sold it to. Like a porch left or whatever.
Maybe you can tell the full story in the post show, because it's been a while since you spoke about that.
I
want to hear more. I've got some questions about that.
I've got some questions in the post show. I've also got something else to talk about in the post show this week. I had a trip to a model railway shop this weekend, and I want to talk about that.
Oh, nice, cool.
So I want to talk about that. But yeah, I fancy just painting an Iron Warrior model to nod to that sold and stolen army. And to just paint it in a different way. It's a bit more fun and a bit more different from what I would normally do. So I'm very keen to do that. So that's something else as a fun little thing, and that I don't want to do a whole army of Iron Warriors again, maybe in the future at some point. Don't know. Not confirming that, not denying that. That's not a new thing. But yeah, I'd love to do that.
We could make it a thing.
No, we couldn't. Not at the moment. Not at the moment. But yeah. But I think that if you don't like painting and you feel it's taxing, then I think there's lots of different things that you can approach to do that will either spur you on to paint or that will make the process 10 times easier for you. And I think it really is important about thinking about it, because I think that's one of the things that we go headlong into this to try and get something done to game with, and and you let the sort of like the what you see online and all that stuff, it's kind of like blind you to sort of like actually finding some enjoyment in the way that you get to that point that you can game with it. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, I think people, generally speaking, get way too caught up with the end product rather than the...
Yeah.
It's that age-old saying, stop and smell the roses. It's like, if you don't actually enjoy doing it
100%.
and be in the moment and be more present while you're doing the hobby, then arguably kind of what's the point?
Yeah.
Because yes, it's nice and cool to have like this finished thing. And for some people, that is just the ultimate goal is to have your army painted so you can game with it, because that's where you're going to have your fun. But, it's time that you're spending. It's time that you're never going to get back in your life. So you might as well try and enjoy it as much as possible. And if you are enjoying it, stop and be present and actually like take the time to say, oh yes, I am actually having fun, and remind yourself. Because I think especially if you're like us, and like I guess we're guilty of maybe perpetuating that slightly with the podcast, but if you're always looking to improve your painting, you're never focusing on the having fun while you're doing it part, which is something that I've been guilty of a lot. And I'm trying to spend a lot more time just chilling the hell out while I'm painting and stop being in my own head and thinking about how I'm going to make it better. Because yes, I do enjoy that ultimately. But again, just being more present and just saying like, oh yes, I'm actually having fun right now.
Yeah. Do you find that you're pushing yourself to get better too quickly rather than, like you say, enjoying the process? You can still get better.
I think it's about balance. I think it's about balance.
Well, I think everyone's doing
their own
everything too quickly to a degree. Everyone's impatient.
Course,
You know, no one wants to. It's not
be good yesterday.
Yeah, but no one wants to hear. You know, in 6 years, you're going to be really good at this. No one wants to hear that.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you think as well that might be some of the reasons why people don't want to paint their armies or not interested in painting?
Potentially,
Because they see that
there's lots of reasons. Obviously, there's time availability. There's other things in life, kids, family, like loads of other things that go on.
And we know from speaking to the community, some people are just daunted by it and they don't feel that they're very good, especially if they're early on, especially if they're beginners.
Yeah.
And they don't feel that they're good at it yet. So that kind of puts them off and they go, well, it's going to take so long to get good at it and I want to be good at it now. And I was in that spot. But arguably that frustration is what actually drove me to get
100%.
Better in the first place.
I think you're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. And the reason for it is that painting miniatures is not this instant thing that you can just click your fingers and it happens. Like modern society having less patience and attention being mitigated, they kind of work against each other.
Yeah.
Like you kind of have to put all that in to get the result. In whatever execution that is, you have to put an element of time in to get to it. But then your expectation is, I want it now, and they just don't work with each other. So
no, I know what you mean. Yeah, I think as well. That's why for my own painting, I just kind of not too worried about what anyone else is painting really. Although when I look at stuff, I think, oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
but
good for inspiration.
Yeah, of course it is. I always look at a lot of stuff for inspiration. And see how other people have done things to sort of make my own mind up on how I want to do things. But ultimately, I don't think I want to do it like that. I think I'm kind of building my own sort of style, I guess. I'm not really too worried about it so much.
Everyone is looking up, if that makes sense. But what you don't think about is the fact that what you do, other people look up to, and you inspire other people with what you do as well. So it's very much a give and take kind of thing.
And whether that's on Instagram or at the local shop
or gaming club or whatever.
Gaming club, or even on the table, you meet an opponent, maybe it's an organised game.
Yeah.
But, they're looking at your models thinking that even if they don't say it, oftentimes people are thinking that as well.
Well, I've never seen someone paint a purity seal like that before or whatever. I've never thought about doing that on there before. Yeah. I've never thought about doing a different colour to, everyone does them like burgundy or pink or whatever. I never thought about doing them like blue or like, do you know what I mean? Like there's all those little things. You don't inherently think about those things, but then they're commonplace and normal to your painting. But you're obviously looking up. I say you are not directly aiming that at you, but like,
I know
as a person, you're looking at all this stuff that you see online, and you're always aspiring rather than. It's not just one-sided, as I mentioned. It's like there's both sides. What you do, other people will look at, and you might do something that makes. This is the best thing about it. You might do something, or there might be like a way of doing something, or whatever, or a color that you've used with another color, or even little granular things like that. That somebody else who is in a position where they hate painting might look at it and go, well, that looks really good actually. And that could be the moment that then makes them engage and go into that. Does that make sense? So I think you've got to think of it that way, like look up, but also realize that people are also potentially looking at your stuff and going, oh, that's cool. I'll try that,
And also like just stopping that behavior, because like comparison is the thief of joy. And also I think the only person you should ever compare your painting to is yourself, your past self, which I think is why it's so important to, even if you're not looking to post them on socials, I completely understand that. But I think taking photos of stuff is really, really valuable. And also just on occasion, like if you still have them, like get out some of the old miniatures you painted and have a look at them. And you can, because you don't see the gradual changes day by day. But when you go back and look at something that you painted 3 months ago, 6 months ago, and you go, oh, actually, I am getting better. Yeah. I think that's really, really valuable.
Don't forget to put the dates on the underside of your bases.
That's really
cool. You've said that before. I keep meaning to do that.
I've started to do that. I think that's
because I'll look at the date in my phone about when the photo was taken.
Yeah,
but
it's quite cool just sort of flipping the miniature over and think, I did that 6 months ago. I can't believe it.
Yeah, for sure.
That's good. That good little hack. That
little tip for you.
Yeah.
If you're worried about your level, half the time you don't even realise you're improving when you are. You don't know how far you have actually improved.
I think I noticeably find that probably more when I look at a model that I've just finished, or when you have the fresh eye break a model you've just finished recently, and then you go back to it. I think that's been the one you notice the most.
Or even if stuff isn't looking better, it might have been easier to get to the same result. So I found with my Blood Angels that I'm doing currently, I'd painted my Stern Guard squad about 6 months ago, and I'm onto a squad of intercessors now, and they look arguably the same, but I got to that result way quicker and it was way easier and I didn't have to focus as much. So that's an improvement. Like the models side by side look fairly identical to a degree. That was the intent, but I got there easier. So that's an improvement. So it's not necessarily like tangibly obvious just visually. But if you're finding things easier, then obviously you're getting better, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Should we do our question of the week?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Thank you for submitting your questions for Question of the Week. If you have a question that you want us to answer on a future episode of the podcast, then please leave it in the comments down below on YouTube. Fire us a DM on Instagram. You can join the Siege Studios Discord, link in the description. That's completely free as well. Got a cool community over there. And you can ask us questions. This week, it comes from Evan O'Shea, I believe that says. How do you adapt something to a unique color, like green skin or maybe a colored non-metallic metal? I find I struggle to figure out color choice when doing something unique. I think the skin's probably a good example there.
Yeah. There's always just looking at other artists' work. That's a good source of, how to figure out colours. Or if you want to look for, I do it, but I purposefully do it. If I want to paint something, I think, well, what's the weirdest way I can paint it? What's the strangest way? So I will go and look on places like Pinterest or wherever and get some rough ideas. That's all. I do that first every time.
I think for me, one of the things that I'd always recommend is learning the visual language of color. And what I mean that is like a really like color theory as a topic is very deep and there's lots of different obviously relationships and things within it. I always would recommend, like, as a minimum, understanding confidently complementary or / contrasting, which is the same thing, complementary or contrasting color relationship, triadic, and then harmonious. If you understand those three, just those three in itself, it gives you a really good understanding of the language of color. And the beautiful thing about that is what it does is it allows you to choose colors while you're painting that work very well on your miniatures because of color theory. And secondly, as well, for the exact thing you just said, when you're scrolling on Instagram or on Pinterest or on socials, if the person painting the miniature has that same understanding as a baseline, it actually means that you can then read the model and, most importantly, the choices as to why that painter has chosen those colors for the model. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think, like, as a baseline, like color theory is something that seems like a big daunting void that you can spend ages and ages and ages going into detail on 100%. However, that baseline understanding of complementary / contrasting, triadic relationship, and harmonious, those three will give you such a power of visual language of color choice that you will see a boost in your ability as a painter just from that baseline understanding of color theory. And it's one of the biggest things I think I could recommend to any painter that feels a bit uncertain about color theory or choosing colors, because we've all been there, we've all sat there and gone, oh, I'm painting this cape, and then you sit there for 5 minutes, 10 minutes going, oh, I'm not sure what color to do. But if you have that understanding of color and that language of color as a baseline, it makes those choices more muscle memory like, because you go, well, I've done the cape red, so I know I can shade it with purple because it's a harmonious color, and that means I can do this color as something else because I can paint the armor green because it contrasts the red. It's a contrasting color to red for the cape. Does that make sense? So like, it just gives you a really good, almost like a skeleton of choice. That's the best way for me to explain it. And I really think that is the biggest tip I would give, specifically with this question, when you're painting interesting colors or stranger colors or ones maybe that you don't use as much. Having that baseline understanding makes working on color schemes that are a bit more unusual easier to figure out because you've got a point of origin to go from. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think one of the ways to simplify that, even potentially as well, is it's one of the reasons I actually really liked the Fanatic range from the Army Painter is their sort of color triad system.
Yeah.
And even if you don't have those paints, or you don't purchase those paints, just looking at your own collection of what you've got and just really, really simplifying it down to even just 3 colors.
Yeah.
And just saying, okay, I'm doing green skin. Let's have a look at my paint collection and let's pick out the sort of overall mid-tone color that I want the green to be. Okay, I'm going to pick out this green here. Now let's compare it to my other paints in my green collection. And let's find one that's just darker than that, in like a reasonable jump darker.
Yeah.
Let's find another one that's a reasonable jump lighter. And just starting with that mid-tone as your kind of base coat, shading, just doing one shade with the darker color and one highlight with the lighter color.
Yeah.
And then once you've got that kind of fundamental baseline, you can start experimenting around with, let's throw in some complementary colors.
Yeah.
Or let's go further down and let's break this up into maybe 5 colors rather than doing just a simple triad. You could break it up into like 5, 6. Okay, let's throw some purples in there for some shading because I need a little bit more color, some complementary colors. And kind of just starting as that as like a foundation and a really, really simple way of doing it, and then working your way up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Hobby Hacks is, of course, our closing weekly tradition on the podcast where we share a little quick tip you can implement into the hobby if you're playing along at home. I've got one this week.
Go on.
So I've got I might start this as a new trend. I'm going to call it the, we'll come up with a better abbreviation, but I think of this as a sort of sidekick to some of your hobby tools.
Okay.
All right.
I'm intrigued what this is going to be.
James is thinking, what power tool is it this week?
Not every tool in your hobby drawer can be Batman. There is a place for Robin in the world.
Right.
Okay.
Not if he wants his own movie franchise.
So I'm sure everyone uses tweezers to some capacity in the hobby.
Oh, in the Hobbit, yeah. Sure.
I don't know what you were thinking about there.
Maybe for placing like tufts or for just picking up small components, maybe holding things while you're gluing them and so on. The sidekick to my tweezers, if you will, that I've started using is an old airbrush needle. Now, some of you at home may not have an airbrush. Fear not.
Let alone an old one.
You can purchase airbrush needles kind of on their own anyway. And especially if it's just going to be used for this, I would advise you get the cheapest one you can possibly find. If you're not familiar, airbrush needles are just imagining a sewing needle, but about 4 times the length. So they're several inches long and they're just really, really sharp, and they've got quite a long taper on them.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
So they're very, very, very thin.
I'm intrigued where this is going.
I'm confused. What are you going to say? Come on.
So, because of their length and how skinny they are, they're quite good for reaching hard to reach areas on a model. Whereas tweezers, because they're sort of 2-pronged, are quite cumbersome and you can't always get in certain areas. And why I thought of this was recently, for a photo shoot that we was doing on one of our sets, I needed to add some tufts to the Lionel Johnson miniature. And the model's already assembled, it's already painted, and he's got some spots sort of in between his legs where he stood on this scenery. And I needed to reach in there and place some like little grass tufts, some little patches of moss and whatnot. Tweezers weren't going to reach in there, all right? However, airbrush needle comes to the rescue, and you can pick up your tiny little tufts just on the tip of the needle. You can reach in there, place it very, very carefully. It's like, you know, those, it reminded me of, the like robotic surgery. You kind of feel like that. You're sort of doing this keyhole process, reaching in the gap in between his legs, placing the tuft down, and then pull the needle out. On the reverse side, not only is it blunt, but it's got a sort of like rounded over joint, just where it fits in the airbrush. You can use that to depress and push down on the tuft, make sure it's nice and glued down, and so on. I've got other uses for this. Multi-use tool.
Sure.
Clearing out clogged dropper bottles, great for that.
Yeah.
Because I know people often say like, "Oh, just use a toothpick," but sometimes it's gone like quite deep down into the
I do that all the time.
shaft of the tip. So getting in there with the airbrush needle is quite good because it can reach quite far down. Also, if you've got a model that's got some like, you get some sort of paint crumb in the base coat and it like dries and it leaves like a nasty little like bump on the model. Because they're so sharp, you can just nick that off. Use it instead of getting like a hobby knife out and risking like making a cut or maybe hacking off a bit too much paint. You can kind of just poke it in there, nick it off. If you're doing transfers, you might have a little air bubble or something in there.
Yeah, I use
Pop
that
it with the airbrush needle.
Yeah.
Good
tool.
It's great.
Sure, you could do.
Good.
I've got
about 10 are they are to buy, 10 or 12 quid, something like that.
Yeah, but if you're
they're good.
If you're airbrushing and if you're ever at a point where you need a new needle, definitely don't throw it away.
No, keep it.
Just keep it around.
Yeah,
and also, if you want to if you don't have an airbrush and you just want to acquire a needle for this purpose, go on eBay and find just some really cheap
or an even cheaper
off-brand
option,
needle.
rather than buying an airbrush needle at all. Just get a really thin knitting needle. They're so thin that it does the same thing.
I have to admit, I don't frequent knitting very often, so I'm not familiar with
You
needles.
just-
But
well, you can get them pretty much everywhere.
I agree with you in
Very
principle, but I found that sewing needles, generally speaking, are not nearly as sharp. And even though they might be like as long, I know some are longer, like knitting ones and whatnot, because I've got just that really nice chamfer and they are super razor sharp and they're so thin at the end. Because obviously they're quite fragile, whereas like a sewing needle or a knitting needle, whatever, is made to be like fairly robust. So it hasn't really got any like flex in it.
yeah.
But the airbrush needle is like almost like
I can say you
flexible.
can get really thin ones. Really
Okay,
thin
fair enough.
ones.
Yeah.
And I've got one at home. So
I'm
I-
Okay.
familiar with it. Yeah.
I use for poking stuff. You know, generally the model.
Torture.
Torture.
Is that what you do when it's not going right? You will paint right.
Paint your face with the other. Yeah, I've got a couple of that. I've got like it's like I don't even know what it's something to do with knitting or sewing or crochet or something like that. It's like a long needle, but it's kind of pointy at both ends.
Oh, okay.
I don't quite know what that's used for in that kind of hobby or world, but
Injuring yourself.
it's very good for. I use it a lot for sculpting bases and
okay.
poking
Okay.
and prodding and stuff like that, and just jamming tufts into nooks and crannies with that.
That's your jabber, basically.
That's my poke and
Yeah.
stick. It's about the same length as a paintbrush.
Oh,
And it's
right,
just
okay.
in my paint. I literally keep it in my paintbrush pot.
Fair.
And every time I need something, just
Maybe I'll have to have a look into them then. Maybe they're a cheaper alternative.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I like the airbrush ones because you kind of tend to have them
Yeah.
laying around if
If
you've
it-
got an airbrush.
Also, like I've got like a little pot of paper clips as well. Just if you got paint in the end of your dropper
ball.
pots, just straighten out a paper clip and poke that down.
Yeah, you can never have enough 2 mil
Paper
2 mil
clips
paper
are
clips.
awesome.
Yeah, they're great.
I find that when I frequent the stationery section of a particular shop, I'm always looking for like little bits and bobs I can use.
Yeah,
for
just
for
go to
painting.
my favorite like place for hobby stuff. Just go to the pound shop and get them for like 50. You get like 100 for like a pound.
Yeah, they are good.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are very
so
good.
good for that. So especially if you're just gonna unfold them, I
Unfold
don't
them,
know.
yeah.
You know,
Unfurl them, unfold them.
unravel them,
Yeah,
or whatever.
unravel, yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. On that note, I think we will round out the podcast there. I just want to say, I know this is coming out at the beginning of February. We are, of course, doing the painting challenge for the month. January was January. For you guys, that's finished. But for us, we're recording this at the end of the month and we didn't want to miss off any entries. So we're going to be doing the roundup of the January submissions next week on that podcast. So don't worry, that will be coming. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Paint Perspective. We're going to jump over now to the post show, which is a benefit for our patrons. We do an extra 20, 30 minutes over there. You get the episodes completely ad free. You get audio versions as well. We have an RSS feed. All the other benefits that you've heard throughout the episode from the ad reads for all of the PDF tutorials as well. And we've got some cool stuff coming soon with the Patreon. So keep your eyes out for that. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you next week.
So my Iron Warrior army technically got stolen. This detective was into Warhammer. He obviously had seen it as well, and because it was in like the local area, because they basically
hang on. So the detective was also into Warhammer.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. It was crazy. But
Who played the policeman in the movie?